Welcome to the EQ4 Life Podcast. EQ4 Life is a podcast based on your views as a parent, a companion, an entrepreneur, or business leader, and how learning to be smart about emotions plays out in everyday life. Thank you for participating in this podcast event, EQ4 Life. And here's our host, Perez Owen Taylor.
All right, my man, we're going to go in 3, in 2, in 1. Perez Owen Taylor, EQ4 Life. Excited about today's guest. I got to tell you, we met in the marketplace in San Antonio, Texas. I guess you're calling in. Where are you calling in, John? From where's Puerto Rico? Is that where you're calling in from?
Yeah, I'm down in the San Juan area of Puerto Rico, pretending like I know things and people are listening. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you are a humble man, John Perez. How long are you going to be over there now? You're doing line work, you're doing underground. What are you doing? Just give us a little debrief about what you're doing over there, and in the same suite, maybe tell us a little bit about John.
So a little bit about me. I'm not as old as I look at all, mentally. Anyway, I am a cable splicer, and I have been since, good Lord, 1993. Started my apprenticeship in 91. Was never a lineman. Occasionally we'll pick on linemen just because, why not? I got nothing better to do. But I'm down here in Puerto Rico. Recently, the Puerto Rican utility went from the government-owned PREPA to the privately owned LUMA. So I don't technically work for LUMA. I still work for Quanta, but I'm down here helping them redefine and rebuild the underground electric department down here. And like most of the system after the hurricanes, it needs a lot of work. So that's what I'm doing down in San Juan.
All right. And how long is that project down there? How long are you expecting to be down there?
I should be wrapped up here probably January, February. But the overall privatization of the utility is a 15-year project. The company Luma was formed by Quanta and another company from Canada called ATCO. So it's a 50-50 partnership to rebuild the utility and, rebuild all the facilities that are in pretty bad shape after some neglect and just, too many hurricanes rolling through this little island.
Sure. Sounds like opportunity for Quanta there, business deal, getting involved with the infrastructure. Love it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And, I've been reaching out to a bunch of people and, hey, if you want to work where it's 85 and sunny basically every day for the next 15 years, come on down.
This could be a plug, a recruitment. I want qualified apps only, right? Qualified apps only. Now you're being modest a little bit. You've been in the business for a long time. Again, I've been listening to your podcast, why don't we plug that real quick? What's the title of your podcast, John?
So my podcast is Underground Power and Splicing. We talk a little bit about business. My last episode, I want to say it was off the rails, but off the subject. I talked with my nephew about life and music because I love music. Mm-hmm. It can put me in a good mood. It can take me out of a really bad mood, kind of my salvation, so to speak. And that's what we talked about, but it's mostly about business.
Well, I've been listening. And again, I'll say to the audience here, you kind of motivated me to get this one going. So again, appreciate you making some time, especially being afar. You're a family man. Talk to me a little bit about that. Again, I think the role you play at Quanta is, you created a lot of these programs, right? Don't be modest. Talk to me a little bit about you got some family, and then, you're one of these retired guys, or soon to be retired, right? But the knowledge capital goes with you. And that's why I think it's so important that we get it out of your head before you become a consultant, right? But tell us a little bit more about your family life.
So family life, father of 8. Yeah, everybody has the same reaction.
That's emotional intelligence right there, brother.
Father of 8, grandfather of 14 now. 3 kids from my wife's first marriage, 4 adopted kids, and 1 foster child who stayed with us. I don't know how long, but she was at the age where she had the choice. She didn't want to be adopted, but she stayed for a long time. Out of that came a bunch of grandkids, which when I get a chance, I will spoil them rotten and send them back. And then say, hey, that's 18 years of payback for whatever you did when you were a kid.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, we talk about, emotional intelligence and we're going to dive into it, right? Try to be friendly. But that takes a lot of being smart about emotions, raising that big of a family. Yeah.
You kind of have to tune into some of the things that are going on in the house, even when you're not there a lot, because my wife deserves most of the credit because, time I was still working 2,000 hours overtime a year to pay for 8 kids.
Yeah.
But you got to get that feeling of what's going on in the house, right? If there's that sense of tension and you're not sure what it is, and
right,
some people don't like the hey, let's just confront it and say what it is, but sometimes that's what you got to do.
Absolutely. And I heard it in there. It's kind of an underlying message, but it's a loud one, and that's you got to have a good support, and that's mama, right? She carries a lot of the weight, especially when we're on the road. Right?
Oh yeah, yep. She's a real important piece.
Absolutely. It takes a team, 100%. The, our career paths, we crossed in San Antonio, and it was just kind of a natural fit. Aside from a good sip of whiskey and a good cigar, and a good music, right? Because we're both headbangers. But you heard something, you being a subject matter expert in the business we're talking about is electric utility. So you deal with a lot of safety critical tasks. You're now, I think you created a lot of the intellectual property that now gets taught. So you're teaching people how to do the craft. Yep. What was your thoughts there in San Antonio when you heard me talking about emotional intelligence? What was your first thought there?
Yeah, first thing I thought to myself is, this is stuff we've talked about, but no one ever, I guess, formatted it to say this is what it was, if that's the right term,
Right.
And I think I said to you afterwards, some of the stuff it's spot on with some of my philosophical stuff, from like Aurelius, know thyself and stuff like that, where that emotional intelligence piece, it's been with me for a long time. And I can't say I've taught the emotional intelligence, but I've poked at it, but never quite knew exactly what it was until you said, this is what it is. Your emotional brain easily overrides your intelligent brain. Which also ties into, like I said, we see a lot of accidents where dudes, it was a day before they were going to move into a new home, and it was Friday before vacation, and they got hurt because emotionally or mentally, so to speak, they're elsewhere. They're thinking about vacations and moving. They're not focusing on, what we do, which is kind of dangerous.
Absolutely. And it's almost like as I'm listening to you, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about, hey, what does it take today to keep your mind on task?
Yep.
Again, being smart about all these things, right? You got these things coming up tomorrow. Got mama, got the kids, got little Johnny at the house, but being smart about today. But then again, if you rewind the game tape and you look at, root cause analysis or an accident investigation, that's the common message there is it could have been preventable. And, John, I'm going to say it, bro. And I will go to the grave debating with the government that these are soft skills, but that's what it was when we were coming up. I mean, it was the soft stuff. We didn't need the soft stuff. We needed the technical stuff. Yes.
Right. And I mean, God forbid you said soft to a dude back in the day, right? Even now, some days when you say soft, you're like, what do you mean? What do you mean I need soft skills? I'm not a soft guy. I do this.
Right. Absolutely.
I work with my hands.
And nobody talks about the word emotions. I mean, even in some of the most safety critical industries, we see that whole concept of emotions. But I mean, you said it right? I mean, it's the emotional brain can take over the thinking brain. And that's when we see bad things could happen, especially with safety critical tasks.
Yes.
So, let's talk about you, bro. You get a lot of balls in the air, man. I mean, again, your role in your career, you're with Quanta, you're obviously training trainers. You're out now in the field. You've got the family cylinder, 8 kids. What do you do to relax a little bit when you feel it getting heavy? Is it music? Is that what you're going to tell me?
If it's been a really bad day at work, yeah, it's definitely music. I get it, whatever vehicle I'm in, depending on where I'm at, because I travel so much. And it's windows down, music loud. It could be, Lamb of God or Anthrax or someone pretty heavy. And people are looking at me as I roll down the road, screaming my face off. But by the time I get where I'm going, I'm relaxed. It's out of my system.
Absolutely.
And if I'm still dwelling on it, I always sit down at home and write on a piece of paper what's bugging me and possible solutions, or what I should have done differently, or how I should have thought differently at the time. Kind of a reanalysis, I guess, so to speak.
That's huge. That's huge, John. I mean, even in the best practice of things where we teach a couple of things, which I hate doing, is journaling, right? Getting it out of the head. But then that reflective action, doing it in a healthy way. I mean, that's actually one of the emotional intelligence skills. Most of us rewind the game tape. You know, we see her, bashing somebody's head up against the floorboard, or all the things that we want to do, but we don't hope. But I think you said it right. The key there is what is it I could do better? What's the corrective action next time? And that's the healthy way of sitting and reflecting back. My compliments to you, man. Now, I want to say on the music, bro, you're not singing the lyrics. It's more about the groove and the grind. Am I right? Or are you down in the lyrics?
For me, music, it not only has to have the feeling, I have to connect lyrically. It has to have
really, okay.
It has to have that emotion to it, right? And it can be any genre. If it's got the emotional piece that can either lift me up or get me out of anger, or just like, man, let's just go out and have some fun. And that's the lyric that gets me in that groove, coupled with the music. Yeah, I'm all over it. I love lyrics.
I guess for me, it's always been more just the grind or the riff, or the music that's made from the different instruments and the melodies. I can't always say that I'm following the lyric, but either way, anything in this discussion that ties back in, anything that gets us off the stressor. If again, whatever is stressing us out, it could be a relationship, it could be something in career, finances. But if the music and paying attention to the music brings a sense of calmness, that's really what we're talking about. I appreciate that. What about personal best, dude? You've done a lot of stuff, man. Even today, I say you're a stakeholder in raising up the next generation of folks in the electric utility space. But what's as you look back, some highlights? Is there a personal best?
And the problem there is I really do suffer from CRS. I can't remember shit. There are some great things in life. I can say the few days I've been in court with kids and adoption papers have been finalized and handed over, and that feeling, and you can see the happiness in the kids that they finally have a place. Coaching my oldest son's baseball, sometimes frustrating, sometimes great. Great times with my wife that I can think of over the years where we've finally had some time by ourselves, or just had those, I guess you call them the moments that were just great to be with. Right. And the funny part is, with all the stuff I do, everything points to more of the personal stuff, Were there great some career moments? Sure. But the family, the home, things like that are always the ones that come to my mind first.
Absolutely. I'm all about models, man. So if you're following him on my shit, it's about models. That's a 6-cylinder model where we put that family cylinder a lot higher than we do the career cylinder. Great milestones in both, but again, the adoptions papers, time with mama, I think that's because that contributes to the health. It keeps us healthy, man. There's a lot of people, we got this, and I'm not going to say a workforce gap, but you know how this is, John. We've been talking about this for a while. There's a lot of us older dogs, 50s and our 60s. We know a lot of shit. It's about time. It's time for us to exit the marketplace, or we get more selective. Let's say that. So in the same regard, we've got these, I call them the teenage generation, the 20s generation. We've got a lot of young folks coming up. What would be your bit of advice? Someone coming up in our space, electric utility, and I'm leaning towards safety critical tasks. But I mean, what is the message? What's something you share with somebody coming up in the business?
The couple things I'd have to say from my time, you get a lot of those old guys, and like, hey kid, let me show you something, or let me tell you something. We're young and we're cocky and we're like, no, I know what the fuck I'm doing. And maybe you don't. Right. Those old guys still have knowledge to share. And I've talked about this before on multiple spaces, but in my time, safety was different, right? Safety is far more important now. And I'm reaching a point where I don't think safety should be about, I guess, safety, so to speak, right? Safety should be baked into what you train people to do. So they're taught to be safe while they're taught to be skilled professionals. And then safety, so to speak, becomes about compliance. They're making sure you're doing the things you're supposed to do to be a safe professional.
Right.
But take the safety seriously. Listen to some of the old dudes. And if you're on a crew and there's 4 or 5 old dudes and that one guy who really isn't saying anything, that's the guy who's got all the knowledge. He's usually the one who's quiet about it. He's not the chest beater, right? He knows what he's doing, but he just stands back, does his job, and does it well. Those guys know a lot.
Right. And you're speaking volume, and you're saying a lot of stuff. I mean, even from, the perspective of, how we got here. I mean, we knew back in the, the sweatshop days, go back pre-OSHA, 70s, look at OSHA arrival, this compliance measure of safety. I'll tell you, just in my own experience of serving the marketplace, talking about career, that's where we're talking about more about human performance. And it's because that's safe and productive. And I don't want to get on the spins, but I got to tell you this quick story. I had a Marine, John Scott, God rest his soul, Vietnam, came back, did some wonderful things with DuPont, was a part of that DuPont movement, which really established safety. They did some neat things. And, in interviews, I would hear him say, it's like, look, man, if you're harping safety all the time, if that's what you're harping, there's a good chance it's not getting done.
Yes.
So, again, to just kind of incorporate it into, hey, this is how we do the work today.
Yes.
But there's that emotional component, bro. And, again, a lot of chips and big shoulders and cowboys and personality styles. And, that's why I'm a big advocate for the self-check, right? That's self-checking, peer checking, stop work. I mean, do you embrace those in your work habits? Those 3, those are the big, mighty, powerful in human performance: self-check, peer check, and stop work. Do you embrace those?
We probably don't call it that.
Right.
At the top of every job brief or somewhere on a job brief, excuse me, and I'll tell everybody, you better write or it better say anyone can stop the job, right?
Right.
Anyone. I don't care if that dude's been on the job for 2 minutes.
Right.
I don't care if it's his first day or his last day. Anyone can stop a job. And you should think about what you're doing before you're going to do it, right? And part of that, especially for some of the young guys, we tell them, look, don't let that old guy or the guy next to you, no matter what age, experience level they are, don't let that person put your life in their hands. If you know what you're doing is wrong, don't do it, and don't be afraid to say it. And that's the self piece where it's hard to self-govern, right? There's a lot of times where I went to work and they were like, hey, this job's got to get done, and I'll give you 4 or 5 extra hours overtime if you're willing to do it. And I jumped. I never thought about it. 4 or 5 extra hours overtime? Are you kidding me? Let's go. Was it dangerous? Stupid? Yes. Well, 5 extra hours overtime? Yes.
Right.
So that's where the self piece for me falls apart. But I keep telling everyone that's how you have to think about the self, right? Because you got to go home every day the way you got here. Your family wants to see you. Even if you left home mad at the wife, you're going to want to go home and see her at the end of the day. Right. So the self part of make sure you're safe. Don't let anybody else compromise your safety. Anyone can stop that job. Absolutely. And where I come from, peer checks are super important. So like, for example, I identified a piece of cable that we're going to cut, which was once live, right? We identify that cable, we put a mark on it, and it's white tape, and it'll say like my initials, JMP. It's 92121. It's feeder Yankee 2220, and we're going to cut it. And the guy standing next to me who watched me ID that cable will put his initials on the piece of white tape too. And we'll both say, you in agreement? You saw the ID. We're good with that. That's a cable we'll cut.
Love that.
To me, peer check is huge, especially on really critical tasks, especially in the underground. Cutting a live 12 kV cable, unfortunately, that's been done by a few people with hand cutters or while they're standing in a confined space. And I'm telling you, that's the end of a career, if not the end of your life.
Right.
So it's critical.
Man, you're speaking so much. I mean, the self-check piece, again, it's not about technical competencies. We wouldn't have, again, we believe that we have you on task, that you're competent, but self-checking, again, is where am I at? Where's my mind at? Is it on task? The peer check, the two-part verification. I guess on that peer checking, and that's something we're battling from generation to generation. And this is, a part of the emotional intelligence piece is having the courage.
Yes.
And it's not a kumbaya or a coddling moment, but it's difficult out there, from your own experience, these little subcultures of what it's like sitting in the truck. And that the amount of emotional tempo to be able to just, again, have the courage to say, whoa, and, speak it. Hopefully it goes both ways. We have the courage to speak it, but then that senior leadership or supervisor, foreman, GF has it's got to be something in the social competencies, mindfulness, empathy to receive it and deal with it. You would agree.
Oh yeah. And I tell a lot of guys, I've said it myself in the field far too many times, but you'll get young kids who will come in and, they'll be doing something and they're like, well, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. And I would turn around and snap, hey man, leave your feelings at home. I don't care how you feel. This is what we're doing today. Right. So like you said, that being able to stand up and say, no, we got to do this, or to self-check and say, man, that kind of hurt, but I get it. And I still got to keep my head in the game. All important stuff. Cause I'm not that far removed from the field. And I know guys who still say almost the exact same kind of stuff in the field. So it's hard. The field work is hard. And like you said, there's a little culture. This crew is different than this crew. Right. This general foreman is much different than this general foreman. And I see a lot of stuff on leadership. It's posted all over the place, right? Especially like on LinkedIn. And I was watching something earlier today that inspired me to do something else I just don't have time to do. But everybody's got this leadership thing, right? Let's talk about leadership. Leadership this, leadership that. A lot of degrees, a lot of smart people, whatever. Well, how come no one's talking about how to be a good leader in the field? Because that's not the same as being a leader in an office place, right?
Thank you for participating in this podcast event, EQ4Life. EQ4Life is a podcast based on your views as a parent, a companion, an entrepreneur, or business leader, and how learning to be smart about emotions plays out in everyday life. To learn more about the EQ4Life podcast or Parrish, please contact us online at info@parrishowentaylor.com or call 866-487-2815. That's 866-487-2815.